Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome back to Anime King 2. And today I'm going to be giving you part 9 of What If Naruto Was a Uchiha that created his own village, guys. Remember to get this one to 100 likes as usual. Share this to all of your friends on your social media platform. And also, guys, don't forget to go ahead and check out the brand new episode of What If Naruto Was the Reincarnation of Gilgamesh. And enjoy that, guys, over on Anime King. And if you're new and this is the first time hearing my voice, yes, I indeed have 3 more channels that I post What If on every single day for you guys to enjoy. The link will be down in the description, so go ahead and obliterate that red subscribe button and become a part of the Anime King family. And thank you for all of your help and your support. So without wasting any more time, how about we jump right into this brand new episode? Let us begin now, guys. So, the last part we left off. War was on the horizon, yes. War was on the horizon. Jiraiya had returned back to the Hidden Leaf, only to find out that he was too late, as Danzo Shimura was the Hokage now. After all these years, he finally got what he wanted, and he was satisfied. Danzo's words about fear and attack caused all of the others to side with him. Maybe he wasn't so far off, they thought to themselves, as things became more than they expected, so they had to do something, yes. They had to do something. However, it turns out that the rage between the 2 other nations were much more larger than he thought. So Danzo was going to make a peaceful word first. Well, this was just an action to prove that Konoha might was great, sending root ninjas towards Naruto's place. As they waited, as Naruto stepped out there himself, Danzo wanted him to hand over the Nine-Tail, and a suitable host as well. Naruto removed the heads of the 3 of them, leaving one to send a news to Danzo. As Danzo got the reply, Naruto was coming for him, yes. He had not forgotten what he did to many members of his clan, and he would not simply allow that to stand, so yes, he was coming for him. Mei received word from the other Kages, as they wanted her help, yes. They wanted her to be involved in what is about to happen, but she renounced what they had to say, as she wasn't about to join the attack on her ally. However, that meant that they were against her, so that was a problem. The Tishikage and the Raikage sat down as they spoke on what they were going to have to do and how they were going to have to do it. Naruto went to pay Itachi a visit as he found out that Izumi was pregnant. He was able to read rather quickly what was going on. He also told Itachi what happened between him and Ursa as well. Itachi and him both sat down and spoke about the issue. Despite the fact that they were going to be attacked on all sides, neither of them seemed too worried, as both him and Itachi also spoke about the man with the Rinnegan. Itachi asked Naruto if it came down to it, would he lose? However, Naruto told him that he would win. We then skipped towards the masked man speaking to none other than Nagato. As they had a conversation, Nagato did not trust him, and Nagato was feeling a new level of enlightenment regarding his new friend. Yes, he was feeling a new level of enlightenment towards his new friend, as things were going good. Friend was a loose term at the moment, but he was the only person that he ever come across that truly understand the concept of pain without him having to explain it to him that quickly. As we then skip to later that night, as Naruto and Ursa lie in bed, things were becoming rather deeply connected between the two, and things were going great. The word about their relationship had been kept to a minimum circle as we speak, as many did not know about it. After all, something big was coming up. They didn't want to release this news just as yet. So yes, they were focusing on what is to come, which was the conflict between the nations that would be surrounding them. The day finally came as a platoon arrived first. They tried to destroy the barrier but they failed. They tried to go underneath the sea but powerful sharks that were man-made were down there that ripped them to shreds, literally tearing them limb from limb, as their body were infused with paper bomb when they were destroyed, so they exploded. Countless numbers were destroyed in matter of seconds. The Raikage and the Tishikage was not far off. The Tishikage lessened the weight on some of his men so they could drop bomb from above. However, despite the destructive force, the barrier was able to conceal and send it away, using the chakra to strengthen itself. That was until they pulled out their three-tailed beasts, which they proceeded to launch, attack and attack and attack and attack and attack once again. As the Raikage and the Tishikage arrived, as Naruto came up on the barrier like a monitor, he spoke to them. As he proceeded to step out, him alone, the tail beasts start to charge another tail beast bomb. As the Raikage and the Tishikage gave Naruto one last chance to give up and renounce everything that he had to them. However, Naruto told them that they misunderstood. He was giving them a chance to spare their man, but now it's time that they understand the true meaning of pain. Suddenly the skies started to part as something started to descend from the heavens, shocking all of them. Naruto's next word started chaos. "Let's dance," he said. So yeah guys, basically that's where left off. You guys again, switch across the place, check it for yourself. So say we jump right into this brand new episode. Let us begin now guys. Naruto was always planning for the future. His investment in the land of spring had come a long way. He knew that something like this would happen. He knew the time would come when the army, consisting of Kumo ninjas and stone ninjas, numbering in the thousands, passing 10,000s going up. They saw him, they believed that he was alone. They could crush him under their might. However, as the tail beasts generated their tail beast bomb, they saw the heavens parted, technology that majority of the elemental nation did not possess as of yet, started to show. Airplanes. Weaponized airplanes. They were black, with long red stripes running down the side. The symbol for the Uchiha nation painted on the front. They were powered by specialized engines that allow them to fly straight upwards and come down without a problem, and even boost to fly straight forward as well. This was a peak of technology at the moment. There were 5 of them. Under the bottom it opened up to reveal Naruto's people, as Ursa was amongst them. The group of Uzumakis, 5 to each, was going through hand sign. As they finished, the tail beasts launched their bomb as Naruto stood there, having faith in his people. A very powerful Fuinjutsu that created what seemed to be a mirror surrounding the entire village. They pumped their chakra out as it connected with the land down below. The tail beasts were shocked when they watched as their bombs were absorbed. They passed through one another like a reflective sphere before blasting back out. They couldn't dodge that. They exploded with a ferocity that threw every tailed beast forward. That is when the Uzumakis and the other ninjas started to descend downwards. The Uzumakis already going through hand sign, throwing up seals upon seals, chains shoot outwards and wrapped around the 5. the 4, and the 8 tails, trapping them where they stood, as another landed on their stomach, blurring through hand sign. The Raikage thrust forward, however. He came face to face with Naruto. He immediately looked away, not wanting to look into the Sharingan. I'm afraid that I'm gonna have to send you two away for just a minute. That's all I'll need, said Naruto. The ground started to light. There was a seal under the damn sand. The Raikage jumped, Oniki moving away, but it was too late. Their chakra was not registered to land. Their bodies were immediately teleported by space-time ninjutsu, sending them a far distance away. Both men appeared thinking that they would be gravely wounded, but that was not the case. They checked themselves. They realized that they were back on the mainland. Cursing, they started to rush back to the battlefield. Meanwhile, his people finally descended. A whole army of them. Their numbers pale in comparison to the stone and Kumo as well. Both Itachi and Urza stood by Naruto left and right. Behind them were second-in-command platoons. Naruto gazed towards his people. 5, he said. They all nodded, knowing what it meant. Naruto then took off, clearing the entire distance within a matter of a second. Just raw speed. As every commander, including Urza and Itachi, started to count down in their mind. 5, 4, 3. This is it. Here he comes! The army on the other side shouted. 2. Charge! They shouted as they rushed forward. Bloodlusted as Naruto crashed into the force. Urza and the others reached 0 as they gave the signal and took off. Members already going through hand sign. The 5-second delay was to make sure that they weren't caught up in Naruto's attack. One man took out 20 in a second. Bodies were sent sailing. A blade was coming towards his head. Naruto ducked and gripped it. Before he slammed the blade into the eye of the person, he turned and kicked, delivering a kick that snapped another spine. He jumped and delivered 2 brutal kicks. Any ninja that passed him or is left behind was slaughtered by the company. And any past them was slaughtered by the 3rd company and the 4th. It was a well-oiled machine as Naruto was moving like a demon through the crowd, his eyes switching from left to right. Techniques were drawn as water was sent sailing towards Naruto in a massive wave as the ninjas parted. Naruto went through hand sign while still moving as he took in a breath. Fire style. Plasma wave, said Naruto. Naruto released a strange fire technique from his mouth. It didn't come out as their usual fire technique. It came out in a spear form. And it was long. It split the water. However, both ends of the technique started to evaporate before they got anywhere close. Blood-curdling screams were heard as ninjas were severed and burned into pieces. The others were shocked as they started to run, but legs were taken off, arms were taken off by the intense, concentrated fire beam that rose hundreds within seconds. Stone techniques were launched, giant boulders towards Naruto. He flashed through hand sign and jumped in the air. The water exploded out as massive trees came from the bottom of the ocean. They thrust and destroyed the giant rocks before they contained them and started to launch giant pieces back. Bodies were crushed. The Uzumakis at the far back slammed their hand on the water as the water started to release a fire, kinetic energy underneath. Those that thought it was a good idea to go below, their bodies were boiled and burned until the life was sucked out of them. Hundreds of vines started to erupt from the sea. They were grabbing onto ninjas' legs and sucking their chakra out. And they were multiplying, becoming thousands thousands upon thousands. The group started to pull back as their boats, their ships were being destroyed. That is when Naruto suddenly tilted his head as a spear whipped past him. Time seemed to slow as Naruto gripped the hilt of the spear and turned and thrust it back. The ninja that threw it moved out of the way, dodging his own technique. However, he didn't see the kunai that Naruto threw directly behind it as it split through his skull. He's a monster. Two of them beside him said as they watched their friend fall. Naruto thrust right into the crowd once again. Screams of the dead and the dying could be heard. It was a massacre. That is when they started to hear something as they looked up. The first kunoichi that gazed up, her head was blown into pieces as her corpse dropped. Up above the weaponized aircrafts, two ninjas were on opposite side as they were funneling their chakra into the weapons. Specialized chakra blaster that were targeted and pinpointed at the enemy. They started to shower down upon them. It was brutal, gory, and overall disgusting. Their bodies were ripped and torn apart. Even if they were fast, even if they were strong, there was just so many as Naruto watched, standing there as bodies needlessly floated within the water. It was pure chaos, death. The water was drenched red as the blood was filling the entire place. Akumo Ninja was hit so hard that he buckled under the stress before Urza snapped his neck. Another tried to sneak up on Naruto, but two kunais lodged in the back of his skull, courtesy of Itachi. Another tried to go up ahead, but Uzumaki brought down a bow staff and crushed his skull. As Naruto stood there in the center, that is when he noticed the Raikage and the Tishikage returning. It's time. Urza looked towards Naruto. However, her confidence was not wavering in the slightest. Urza went through hand sign before performing what is known as a inkless seal, as a sealing formula materialized in the air. It was like a specialized flare that gave them a green signal. Every member started back away, including Itachi as well. There was still a couple thousands left. Their numbers had been large after all. The greatest part of all of this was not a single one of Naruto's people fall. In order to kill his people, they had to get past him. And even if they did, they had to get past Urza, Itachi, and the forces behind them, which were no laughing matter. And they would have already been, well, surprised and shocked by Naruto's power, so yes, they were easily struck down. Meanwhile, standing with another group was Tsunade. As she stood there, all the ones that got injured in the battle were brought towards her and the medical corps as they quickly started to mend their wounds. She looked towards the scout that was standing there. No one was killed. That made her felt relief, as no one was killed on their side. She then gazed out as she saw the smoke. So this is it, huh? She thought to herself. She knew Naruto, she knew what drives him, and she knew that he would never put his people in unnecessary danger if he could do something about it. Now, they were going to witness the true power that he possessed, and why they shouldn't have attacked this nation. A far distance off watching, observing everything from his bird, was none other than Nagato, using the path of Tendo, as Konan was nearby as well, observing the scene down below. Konan had asked him if he was going to intrigue at first when he saw the tail beast bomb, but he did not make a move because he saw. He had a plan for everything, and now Nagato watched as he made all of his people retreat. It made him think about his own people back at the Land of Rain. When was the last time that he faced them? When was he ever out speaking to them as their leader, giving them the confidence that they could trust him? Yes, they saw him as a god, but they fear his power. Is that what it is? He thought. The feeling felt different. The ones at the Rain, they worship and admire him because they heard things, but They didn't know him, but this was different. With a simple gaze, he seemed to instill confidence in his people that everything was going to be alright. The Raikage and the Tishikage arrived. They were shocked. Thousands of their men were wiped out. Granted, they had a large number, but still, bodies were everywhere. They were shocked. And the only one that was standing there was him. Naruto stood there with his arms folded. There was no blood, no wounds. His Sharingan eyes on full display. His gaze fixated on the Raikage. His gaze also fixated on the Tishikage as well. Both men seemed furious. Know this, boy. There is no longer any surrender, the Raikage said. Given the fact that Naruto was alone. Once again, you misunderstand my actions. You see, unlike you people, I will not put my people in unnecessary danger if I can do something about it. Ninjas of Kumo and the Hidden Stone, this is your opportunity. Your two leaders will fall here. Their life will be taken. A handful of you will survive this assault, and that's a promise. I will give you this one chance. You have family back home, loved ones that will love to see you, that will be happy that you're back. Turn on your heels and return back to your village. Spare your life and not risk it for these two madmen that will risk everything for power. Many of them were afraid, cowering, but they could not run. They made an oath to their village. So they stood their grounds. Your little speech failed, the Raikage said. And now, he went straight to 100%. It's time that we put an end to you, once and for all. Naruto's eyes changed, revealing none other than the Mangekyo Sharingan. However, this was no ordinary Mangekyo Sharingan. This was the eternal. The eyes that once belonged to his father. The man that they dare not speak his name. The one that brought death and destruction in his wake. Despite how powerful and legendary his grandfather's name was, his father's name was more ruthless because of those that he slaughtered and the ruthlessness that they, died with. Many has not dared to even speak his name, even after his death. There Naruto stood. His eyes show off a particular set of Mangekyo Sharingan. This was the pinnacle of the Sharingan. Well, that is what most believe. However, in this form, the Sharingan was at its peak, the eternal. Many say that a 4-leaf clover was a sign of good luck. Naruto normal Mangekyo was a 4-leaf clover. However, now, it possessed 6 leaf. Red leaf that seemed to glisten like blood. Around it, darkness. There was no such thing as a 6-leaf clover, but his eyes seemed to represent it. One does not know the definition or what it truly means. But today, on this day, countless will see it before their death. Naruto stood firm. Not a single one of you will pass this line, as he was talking about the section behind him. The Raikage was in front of Naruto within seconds. His hand already lashing out to snap Naruto's neck. However, Naruto leaned back. The Raikage leaped away though. The Tishikage fired his particle style. It was from above. Naruto was gone. He appeared behind the Raikage, who turned and brought his fist down. He released a huge pressure that blew the water away. However, Naruto was nowhere to be seen. The Raikage turned and crossed his arms when Naruto's feet crashed into his guard. The force sent him skipping along the water. Massive golems collapsed down where Naruto stood, created by Oniki, as they tried to grab onto Naruto. Their body was consistent and reeking of chakra. They bounce on top of the water and shoot towards him, curling up into a ball. The sheer destructive power that they possess after firing themselves. However, Naruto held his hand out as the thing was caught. Oniki was truly baffled. Naruto squeezed it until, boom, it shattered. He focused his gaze on the other one and simply punched right through it. The right Kage swung his hand in a chopping motion. Out of nowhere as Naruto ducked and elbowed him in the stomach. Naruto spun and slammed his other elbow under his chin. He turned and slammed his fist in his face. The right Kage staggered as Naruto swept his foot across the water, allowing it to spike upwards. Naruto's fist then came out of it and slammed under his chin. His head snapped to the sky. Given his size and his bulk, you would expect him to be able to tank such hits, but something was wrong. The right Kage felt pain. It felt like it was truly unbearable. He wanted to scream, but his pride wouldn't allow it. As Naruto's gaze looked down towards him, BAM! A brutal kick snapped him to the side. He crashed on top of the water. Countless of Kumo ninjas started to perform their technique as they electrified the section of the water where Naruto stood. The attack encroached upon him before it erupted in a shower of electricity and water. However, when it cleared, Naruto was standing there, completely unaffected. Many were confused. Some of them tried to surround him, but Naruto was gone. Reappearing with speed that they could not track, Naruto's heel crushed the guy's brain. With just the force alone, another tried to pull his blade and swipe. However, it nicked against Naruto's armor. He broke the guy's wrists and grabbed his own blade and decapitated him, and the Kunoichi by his side. The last one tried to jump away, but Naruto pulled a kunai out of the vest of the one that he was still, planting his foot in and swing it forward. It burst through his skull. I said, "None of you will pass this line," said Naruto. The right Kage was back on his feet. "Something isn't right here," he said, as the man had bruises all over, as he spat blood out of his mouth. Our techniques seemed to be unable to even reach him. Naruto stood there calmly. It was his Mangekyou Sharingan technique. It was called the Void. The Void was a very simple technique, and yet it was incredibly powerful. However, using it too much can take a great stress on the eyes. Granted, he would never go blind, but still, it also required a large amount of chakra. Some time ago when he first came across Obito, well, not for the first time, but first time in a long while, Naruto was able to kick right through his infinity, and that was because of the Void. The Void allowed him to create gaps within chakra. Yes, chakra was basically everywhere and all around him, and he used that to its fullest. Naruto was able to create gaps in Obito, Kamui, because he was able to nullify the gap in the chakra and simply kick right through it because nothing was no longer there. You could not sense it. You could not sense when he activated the Void because it was the very opposite of chakra. Think of it as anti-chakra, able to pass through any shield, any force. So when those ninjas sent their techniques towards him a moment ago, Naruto simply created a large gap, allowing the infuse of chakra and technique to go off. However, the gap that was situated between him and the Void was almost unbreakable. That is why he was completely unharmed by the technique. The only problem was the chakra consumption that it took. Naruto had a lot of chakra, a whole lot of chakra, but it took a vast amount of chakra to keep it contained, or to create larger gaps. The larger the gap, the more chakra it took. As we speak, Oniki launched his technique once again. This time, he captured Naruto in a white box. So what Naruto did was create a gap between himself and the box. Despite being inside the gap, surrounded him and the chakra that Oniki used. The gap simply negate the chakra field, opening up a space that could not be seen. A space where Naruto was completely protected. Oniki set off his technique. However, Naruto was fine. The old man was startled and shocked. As the gap vanished, Naruto stood there. The both of them started to discuss what was possibly going on, but Naruto was done waiting. He thrust forward. Meanwhile, over to the other side, the unconscious Jinchurikis were taken away. Their tail beasts will be removed. They came against this village. Their life was already taken away as well. Tsunade stood there, along with the others watching, as he could see quite clearly. Most of the times, Naruto's speed was truly immaculate. Slamming his hand together, Naruto created a literal island. Everyone was baffled. A large island made from nothing but trees and vines rose out of the ocean. They couldn't believe it. Everyone that stepped foot on the island was ripped apart from the inside out. The vines literally flooding into their mouth and then bursting through their stomachs, finding any entrance and ripping through them. Naruto Mokitan was very violent. Hoshirama Mokitan was situated with nature and peace. However, perhaps it was because of the Sharingan. His Mokitan was dark. His trees were thorny. They had vines, powerful, tearing vines. However, that was not all. Naruto started to pull the nature energy into his body, twisting and manipulating the energy. He was one with nature after all. However, his Sage mode, it was just as violent as the Mokitan. His features started to change, red markings appearing under his eyes. They twisted around his eyes like some kind of goggles, as they ran down his cheek and ran down his arms. The lines ran all over his body, creating strange tattoos. Like his Sharingan, Megatama markings all over. His entire energy changed in that moment. Naruto took to the sky by simply stepping on air, using the force of his step. The Raikage jumped in front of Oniki and threw his fist out. Their fists clashed together instead of the lightning holding up. Naruto burst right through. The Raikage pumped as much energy as he could, but Naruto did the same. A collision happened. Red versus blue. Boom! Naruto flipped and landed as the Raikage crashed on top of the water. The island slowly digesting and devouring the remaining shinobis that it caught. The Raikage was bleeding heavily. His right arm was completely gone. Nothing left but a bleeding stump. Naruto dashed across the water, moving so fast that it seemed like there was 5 of him. The Raikage tried to keep up Oniki. He tried his best to capture Naruto, but every single movement was like it was being multiplied by 2. His speed was getting faster. Many tried to jump in to have a fighting chance, but a single punch was able to rupture organs. Heads were being snapped. Bones were being crushed. Oniki shouted for them to move as he pulled out his most powerful particle style. He created a dome that was so large it encompassed a large part of the ocean and Naruto Island. Naruto was stuck inside. It was about to swallow and turn him into dust. Oniki slammed his hand out as he raged, showing the fury and the power. The Raikage stood there, one of his medics, trying to patch his arm as a bright, all-consuming light swallowed every single thing. Even the water was destroyed, evaporated, gone, ceased to exist. Oniki was actually panting slightly. That had to have got him, he thought to himself. Looking out, expecting to see nothing there, and he was correct. The Raikage looked up towards him. Is he gone? He asks. I turned that brat into nothing. It's over, Oniki said. However, something was wrong. The place started to shake. That is when they heard it. However, his voice did not sound human anymore. I told you, this ends with your death. What emerged from below was truly frightening. A distance away, root ninjas were also here to observe the battle. They were shocked by what they could feel and see so far. Scene-wise, there wasn't much, but they could feel the energy spiraling, getting out of control. Something was not right. The sensor amongst the team had to stop. They passed out. Everyone watched as something emerged. Something that was against the very nature of this world. A power that no human should truly possess. This boy had the blood of many powerful legends running through his veins. He spent years upon years pushing himself to his absolute limit, testing the peak of his power to see what his limit was, but he could never truly find it. His body was special. Birth from a Senju and a Uchiha, the two perfect beings fusing into one and becoming this child. While his mother was not a very powerful fighter, her body was also special healing-wise. Many weren't aware of this though. As a strange behemoth rose up from the water, Naruto was in the forehead of this behemoth. This was his Susanoo. It was dark as obsidian. Its frame was colossal, taller than even the 8 tails. It towered over them like they were simple ants. It had a strange clothing on, like a armor of sorts. Not a samurai's armor, but a nowadays mechanic armor. It twisted around its body. Its arms were exposed to the world. However, the rest of it was wrapped up in this sleek armor that you could clearly see was different from its very skin. However, its skin was made from chakra. The armor was a light, whitish color, making it look rather, well, more intimidating, like a ghost. Dark and black consuming into white. However, Naruto's Sage Mode, it also affected it, allowing red markings to run through the armor as a large Sharingan eye opened up on the chest. It wasn't a physical eye, a manifestation of chakra, showing the combination of Sage Mode as well. The head was one straight forward, however it was wearing a mask, a traditional fighting mask that covered every area from being skewered by a spear or a blade. Only the eyes were visible. It had no mouth. Steam resonated from where its mouth was supposed to be. This was a manifestation of chakra, and yet it was defying the laws and physics of what it should actually be. Its eyes displayed the Sharingan, the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. However, they were opposite of the color. Naruto's eyes were black and red, they were red and black. It moved its 2 arms. It had no weapons on it, similar to Naruto fighting style. As it took a step, its feet were still in the water. It raised its leg and stomped. The Raikage jumped away as a colossal explosion of water went up. Oniki flew into the sky. Oniki was afraid. Never before has he witnessed such power. He had come across Mother Uchiha in the past, and the man had released a beast like this upon him, but this was different. The very atmosphere, the very air was tainted with this chakra. It was overwhelming, consuming, all devouring. Only he could feel it. It was like it was trying to reach into his throat and rip his soul out. The power was too much. However, this was special in many other ways. Oniki's attack was supposed to kill Naruto, while his gap was powerful. Oniki's attack was so large it would have reached underground and stopped Naruto from getting out. However, his gap could have handled it, but the chakra that it would take to bypass the force that Oniki used would be a lot. As stated before, while Naruto's technique was simple, he could use it in very, very powerful ways. Naruto was able to create a gap in space and time. The entire atmosphere was saturated with chakra. Most could not see this. Tiny particles were all over. So what he did was create a gap between the space and time and chakra around it. He then created a gap deep underwater. He then proceeded to bend those gaps together. He tried to combine them, however he could not, so in a result, they swapped. They swapped and snapped to each other's place. Think of it like a rubber band. When a rubber band is pulled apart, the elasticity, pull it back together when you release it. However, think of the gap as two separate rubber bands, trying to be pulled together, but when you pull them so close, granted they could not touch, but the closer they got, the more they stretched from their original distance. So once Naruto released it, they shoot forward instead of going back, because of the chakra in the ear. Therefore, the one to the bottom took the one at the top place, compensation because it was so close, and the one at the top took the one at the bottom place, where Naruto was right in the center of it. Therefore, he was also teleported as well. But now, with his Susanoo, Naruto was able to create a gap as his gaze swept over the entire place, the Sharingan in the center of the chest. He was able to create a gap around the entire ocean. Naruto proceeded to bend the space right above and right below, and he created a third one to surround the shinobis. So when he pulled on all three of them, they snapped together in the center. Countless ninjas were pulled. Their bodies collided with one another, crushing and destroying. The Raikage tried to flee, but the arm of the Susanoo came down and caused catastrophic waves. He jumped, trying to run as Naruto created a gap in front of him, stopping him. He was confused, he could not see. He was then grabbed by the Susanoo as he was lifted up in the air. He tried to break, he tried to push it apart. However, all he did was strain his muscle for nothing. The thing clenched its fists as Naruto's gaze was fixated on the man the entire time. It clenched its fists and he popped. Just like that. Just like that. All those that remained that were able to survive. Watch as the Raikage turned into a blood splatter. Nothing was remained. Oniki brought up everything. As he brought up every ounce of chakra that he had. The Susanoo was so large, he fired off a small little particle. It seemed small. However, Oniki shot it towards the people behind Naruto. His intention was to catch him off guard. There was no way that he could protect his people and himself as well. Oniki fired off two of them. However, they enlarged within a fraction of a second. As they were about to swallow the island and everyone that stood there. Naruto released a breath and his eyes changed once again. Something happened as Oniki set off the techniques. A bright light swallowed everything. Everyone had to clench their eyes shut. When the light finally died down, they were safe. Oniki was descended downwards. He was exhausted. Confused and exhausted. He thought this doesn't make any sense. He killed them. They were supposed to be dead. Even if he tried to save them, he would have been hit. There was no way that he could do both at once. Even with whatever power he was using to pull and distort the area. None of this made sense. Oniki thought to himself. He was heavily confused on what was going on. Looking down, Naruto Susanoo was gone. As Naruto's entire body was releasing steam. Whatever he did, his eyes returned back to their normal state. His dark eyes. As he rested his hand on top of the water. It then happened. A shockwave of epic proportion. The entire seaboard shook as a violent power resonated under the sea. Furthermore confusing many on what the hell was that. The steam left Naruto's body as he pulled himself up. He then disappeared. Just raw speed. Oniki was slowly descending down. The space between him and Naruto was great. That is why he was confused. He was heavily so confused. Naruto's hand was through his chest. Naruto's hand was covered by red flames. And it slammed through Oniki's chest without hesitation. The both of them still in mid-air. Oniki was shocked that he could reach him so quickly. There was no way he could literally jump and reach him. How did he get up here so fast? This doesn't make sense. Oniki thought. As Naruto gazed up towards him, his eyes were dark. Not the Sharingan or the eternal Mangekyou. I told you what would happen, said Naruto. And now you can see. It has happened. The both of them slowly descended. Oniki's furious gaze slowly dying out, revealing him as nothing but a weak old man now. Naruto's hand kept on burning and burning as the entire section of Oniki's chest was burnt out. The scream that he had died in his throat, all the moisture died in his body, burnt away as he burnt into dust. Naruto's entire right arm was enveloped in red flames. The water below him started to steam. This was no normal flames. They said the goddess Amaterasu was the antithesis and the originator of the flames, the religion of the Uchihas. They said that you had black, one of the most powerful, flames that never truly end until your opponent is died out. However, red flames were different. Red flames was bonded to the soul of the wielder. In history, there's only been one other person to wield this. Another reason why his father was so feared. The red flames enveloped Naruto. The water was literally boiling and steaming, as Naruto was completely unaffected. His eyes gazing towards all those that left. There was still around 2,000 plus of them, given that they came with around 20,000 plus. Naruto held his hand out, and it was like a balloon exploded outwards. The flames burned the very ocean. They boiled it. It was like they were destroying particles. Burning, they sap all the water. Ninjas could be heard begging and screaming, some wishing that they had take what he said and run. But now it was too late, as their bodies were enveloped and burned till nothing was remained. Those that were lucky enough to not be within the radius, their weapons started to fall. Fear coursing through their form. Naruto made good on his promise, leaving a couple of handful of them, from 20,000+ into the 100. Weapons immediately dropped to the ground. All hope was immediately lost. Naruto knew there was several dozen other people out there that was watching, from different nations to see and to witness. There was also a ship that had came from Kiri with additional support, just in case, as Mei was standing by her ally. Naruto stood there as he saw the look on their faces, how truly afraid they were. Enough blood has been shed here. Those two that sentenced your thousands of people to death have finally met their end. Your life are no longer in jeopardy. I told you what would happen if you did not flee. Those of you that are still hearing my words, you are lucky to still be alive. I'll be sending you all back as a message to your people, to your citizens. It will be up to you to explain to them what happened. Why mothers and fathers are not going to return. Because you listen to a madman. Because you decide to bow to a madman's ways, who wanted nothing but power and was willing to risk every single thing just to get it. And now it's time for you to go home. Leave this place and return back to your village. And let them know what has happened here. Let them understand. Let them know the truth. Let them know the power of the Uchiha nation. Go! Now! His voice sent fear through their body as they started to run. Having lost hope on ever winning, they started to run. Getting the hell out of here. They ran away. Yes, they did. Naruto glanced up towards the heavens. On his bird, Tendo looked down. He knew that he was here. Tendo proceeded to leave, flying off on his bird. Not saying anything, he simply left, leaving the area. The place was a mess. There was destruction and blood all around. As Naruto stood there, looking down at all the blood that he had to shed today, he made a promise to his people though. But he could remember every single face of those that he killed. Their face was engraved into his mind. However, they were warned, they were told countless times, this would be the ending of what would happen. All the watchers fled back to their home, running away in absolute fear. Konoha was amongst them. The Sand was even amongst them. Every nation, large, small, many allies of Naruto. They stood their distance away, but they were still there to see how this would play out. The tail beasts were kidnapped and brought to the village. As Naruto returned, knowing that not a single one of his people were lost. And he would do it again and again in order to make sure they were safe. Risk everything to make sure. His people started to cheer. Cheering on their leader that brought them through this darkness. A darkness that swallowed them years ago. As they stood by his side, they started to return. Many started to go out. And making sure that the sight that was so gruesome would never be one to see again. As for Naruto, he had to move away. Urza and Itachi noticed that as well. Upon getting to his office, Naruto collapsed. Yes, he collapsed. Luckily, they were there to catch him. Naruto overuse is eternal. While he had a lot of chakra, he was spamming a lot of powerful techniques. He overused his eternal Sharingan. Not to mention, this armor that he was wearing was no normal armor. There was a reason why it did not crack or break even after facing punches from the Raikage. Naruto was sending chakra to the armor, Fuinjutsu markers that was under the plates of the armor that used his own chakra to empower it, and spamming his Mangekyo technique, also the Sano, and the flames as well. The flame burned, but they also burned his chakra as well. He just needed to take a seat. As Urza grabbed him some water. It was over. It was done. The message was sent. However, he still needed to address his people within the village. The both of them looked towards him. It will take a lot more than that to keep me down. While his eyes did see a bit fuzzy, but it was immediately clearing up. As Naruto's gaze returned back to normal, he stepped. Showing no weakness, he stepped forward. Yes, he did. Today, over 19,000 had fallen in front of him and his people. And he did so for his generation, his people, to keep on going. The masses started to gather. All of the civilians who were safely tucked inside, they started to gather up. Tears in their eyes, many of them had it, as they saw their proud leader standing tall. Once they were all gathered, Naruto raised his hands. Many years ago, I made you all a promise that I will never allow this nation to ever fall again. That I will never allow my people to suffer under the tyranny of any other. And today, despite facing over 20 plus strong, we came out victorious. They exploded in cheers. And not a single one of our people fell in battle. The cheers seemed to get louder, which was impossible. Snavi stood there with a smile on her face. The two elders, Hina and Kaido, as they remember him when they first met him. Look how much he has grown. Time skip. All of the top-ranking officers were deceased. Therefore, one of the most lowest rank was now in charge. As they returned, it took them a while, but when they finally did, it was the shame. Thousands left and hundreds returned, wounded, and those corpses that they could bring back. It was a truly shameful walk back to their nation. Truly and utterly shameful. So many was killed, so many was slaughtered. For what? For the grudge that was set a long time ago. But now what? They've shown to be very, very much unstoppable and untouchable. Now what are you going to do? Now how? Are they going to face them? Could they even step against them ever again? Their numbers were so small now. Thousands of their men died. Thousands perished. So many mothers, fathers, children's, now orphans. There were so many that fell. Back at the Uchiha nation, Mito was standing amongst the crowd as she saw her big brother standing there proudly and speaking to all of them. She knew the sacrifice that he had to take. She knew that he would do anything for them, risking his own sanity and life to do so. Those people just wouldn't listen. They wouldn't abide by the rules and simply go. But now it was over, and they no longer have to worry about their nation being hunted. Well, she was wrong. After all, while two may fall, it wasn't done yet. But guys, be in so right here. If you want to see the next part and do, Like, subscribe, comment down below, and turn on that bell notification to stay posted. Remember, share to all of your friends in your social media platform. But I'm off for now. See you guys soon. Peace.